left for me to do now is obviously hand you over to Joanne, and I'll speak to you shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Richard, for that. Nice to see up in Seaham, near my hometown. I'm up from around there, and nice and sunny. Makes me want to go to the beach, but I'll stay here and do the webinar instead. So welcome back to those familiar faces that are on the attendee list. Nice to see you again, and also to new people who have joined us. For those of you who haven't listened to me before, my name is Joanne Vose. And I am an HR consultant. I have a consultancy called Relevant HR, and I also run the Business Springboard, where we deliver business training solutions to businesses, primarily in management and leadership. So what we also, as one of our key points in the Business Springboard, is that all our trainers are practitioners as well, so it's real life stuff, and that's what we gain very good feedback from. As usual, there we go, not where I should be. Just a quick on disclaimer and copyright. So the copyright is to the Business Springboard, and any information that I give isn't designed solely for an individual problem. Okay, so that's a formal bit out of the way. So today I want to talk about succession planning. An interesting topic, I think, that we often, in these busy days that we live of kind of instant gratification, and where we have really pressing business needs and results and measures, etc. at the moment, it's something that we do perhaps, if I dare say, even neglect in the background. It might be something that we think we should be doing or know we should be doing, but we can often leave it in the background as one of these tasks that we think we'll get around to doing it and look at the succession. And I think that's just a really big reflection of the culture that we live in today, that we have too many immediate things to think of the future. But it is really a very sharp management tool and a business planning tool to think about our HR capacity. So within this, I'm talking about a human resource, so the resource of people within our business. So what I'm going to talk today is about why we have a succession plan in the first place, what it's going to bring us, how to develop that HR strategy that would tie into your succession plan, and then mix that into the workplace planning, which obviously runs alongside your business strategy, and talking about to end on recruitment and retaining the best people in your organisation, which obviously we want to keep people in there, so we don't have to constantly replace key skills that we have. So as Richard said, please do chat with me. It's good to get some interaction on the chat box. Ask me questions as we go along. I will have a question and answer session at the end. But if there's anything as we go on, please do put it on there. I'll answer it there and then if it's appropriate, or I'll come back to that when the time's right. And also if there's any advice and tips, etc., that you want to share with other people on the webinar, that would be great. Richard mentions the recording. We'll also turn off the recording. I don't know whether Richard mentioned this, just for the questions session at the end, so that bit won't be recorded, so you can ask any more personal work queries on that one if you want to, that you might not want to be recorded. Okay, so, right, as somebody once said, as individuals, we shouldn't always just be looking at where we want to go, but who's going to step into our shoes. Because we can't actually move on unless we've got something to backfill on us. And that's I think a very mature way of thinking in personal development, because it can be very hard to look for somebody to do our job. And it can be quite threatening and, human nature to think, do we want to give our job away? What if my job doesn't work out? Will I want to go back? But as part of successful development, I think this is something that we have to be looking at within an organisation of where we want to go and who will be stepping in our shoes, and have this philosophy with our employees as well, and embrace that. Now, before I get really deep into succession planning, I would want to say that it doesn't always mean climbing up a big career ladder. And we need to get that absolutely straight and out there and on the table from the beginning. I always say every organisation needs, and I'll use the term plodders, but please, I don't mean this derogatory at all. I mean somebody who is really happy doing the job that they're doing. They bring a lot of skills to that job, and they don't want to climb up a career ladder and move into other roles, but they will bring new things to that role as they go along. So development doesn't necessarily mean climbing a career ladder, and that's very important because every organisation that I work with, you will always have a group of people who are really happy doing their job and doing their job well, and will develop in their job but not necessarily move up this ladder. And I think that's a key thing in organisational life, is to understand that there are people in there. Now, I work with some organisations where they're very strict, everybody has to have a development plan to move on to the next role. I agree that everybody should have a development plan, but not to move on to a next role. Development can include becoming better, more equipped, more skilled within your role, or perhaps taking on new elements of the role as you become more competent, and if time allows, it would stretch people and allow them to develop themselves as a person, as their skills, but still give that valid input to that role that they do. So just wanted to get my thoughts and views out there on that point first. But I know this is hard, looking to who will step into your shoes can be a very threatening position to be, because what if, lo and behold, what if they're better than us? That would be just awful, wouldn't it? So, in succession planning, what we're actually looking at is identifying people within our organisations that can that can fill key positions if they become available. So internally was where we would look in succession planning, but sometimes this does then obviously have to span into external recruitment if we don't have that resource there. A few things that I think have made succession planning more prevalent recently is skills gaps and skills shortages. I'd be interested in anybody else's feedback, but I've had quite difficulty recruiting it for salespeople, particularly internal salespeople, over the recent couple of years. Now, I have my own theories on this, and particularly in some of the organisations I've worked with, is that and these are my personal views on this, judging on the organisations I've worked with. Internal salespeople, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, they used to recruit a lot of graduates into these roles. They were identified with skills and competencies to do sales. They would then grow and develop and become your more senior salespeople, external salespeople. Now with these organisations, I'm having a real trouble doing that recruitment to either entry-level sales or just, those experienced salespeople. And I think because that hasn't come through in the market, that when recessions hit and downturns hit, people have cut out that level of recruitment, cut out the graduate recruitment. It's obviously been widely reported in the media that graduates are a difficult market at the moment, that there is high unemployment in there, and we're not having these people growing and developing to move into more senior roles. And that's where succession planning now, suddenly, some organisations are feeling the strain of that in that particular area. So where we used to have new graduates coming in this example, into an internal sales role, doing that for a few years, growing and developing the sales skills, and then ready to move to external sales or internal sales management. We now recruit for internal sales management, external sales, and we have nothing behind it. Our pool is much smaller than what we had before. So we might do a lot of succession plan without even consciously realising that we're doing it. But it's something really that we need to start being conscious of. In essence, it is replacement planning. You're looking to replace the people in the jobs. And don't be afraid of this, and don't feel threatened, and we shouldn't encourage anybody in our team to feel that way for those who want to move on. Obviously, I don't think it's any good message if you're recruiting to replace the people that are very happy where they are and never intend to move on. But those that have development wants and desires, it's very positive to let them know you're looking to backfill, to give them the opportunity to grow. It also can counter the increased costs of finding the talent externally. And again, widely reported in the press, the uptake in apprenticeships, etc., is I think we're moving into quite a big focus of growing your own and developing people internally, bringing people in, early in their careers, setting them on a development plan for growth and development, skills, qualifications, etc., and having a very good plan through them, and that is excellent for succession. It's very good with skill shortages. If you go to recruit at a higher level, it can be more costly and more difficult to find those skills. But if you've had a long program in place where you're growing those internally, that's much more successful. One important thing, and I see this in large organisations as well as small ones, is that sometimes we have somebody who has a quite specific skill set. Now, people are people at the end of the day. Let's be plain about this. We have a limited lifespan. We have a limited work life. And Richard's nodding there on the lifespan. I'm not sure where he's going with that one, but hopefully he'll be around for a little bit longer. But people are, and we're not machines. We get ill, and we have other wants and needs. We might have family needs. We might want to travel, etc., etc. We're in a very vulnerable position if we have a single or a small limited number of people with a particular skill set. So it's very good to build them up. I have a client who has a manufacturing site in safety equipment, and their technical manager is very, very specific in his skill set. And it's quite difficult to recruit into that. And his succession plan has been on the agenda for probably about 5 years now, and we're still really struggling to find that of somebody who wouldn't be that far behind. This guy is, early 60s and has some health problems recently, so we've got to get moving on this. It didn't work initially bringing somebody in more qualified to take on that role, so they're actually gone right back to graduate recruitment to fill that vacancy now, with hopefully enough time to get somebody trained to a level that would be acceptable to allow an exit strategy for the technical manager. So we've got to think not too late, because God forbid, if anything happened to any of these key people in our organisation, who would pick up the pieces and where would we get that from? One very important thing in all this is not about recreating yourself. I think it's somewhere where we have got to really welcome diversity as well. We don't want clones. They might have to, there will be circumstances where skills and traits need to be the same, but also don't be afraid of putting different people in there. I think one of the hardest things, if you're doing this for yourself as well, so you're planning your successor for your role, is to compare to ourselves. And human nature, we like what we are like, and it's very easy to find, I just want another me to do exactly my job. But be open to new ideas and new strategies and allow people to grow and develop in there. I think a key thing is to look at the core skills that are needed in a role, and then model the actual person's specification around that. It'd be very boring if we were all the same. Okay, so why have a succession plan? Well, as I've said there, the word we trade in is so much evolving, and people evolve and change, develop and move. Gone are the days where people spent the whole of the career with one organisation. People do move around, and we need to be very careful with that, that we have in our minds. Nothing is forever. The other thing is that people will get ill, leave for family reasons, when it gets to retirement age or anything more serious than that, people are going to leave our business. So we're going to have to look for succession in there. Importantly, don't just remember that it's not back on this issue of recreating ourselves. The role may develop over time. So if you have an extended succession plan for 5 or 10 years, the role when you start out might not be exactly the same as when you actually fully take over in the succession plan, because the trade changes, the community within which we operate often changes. So do bear in mind that you've got to have flexibility in there. It might be that our market dictates that actually Mr. Smith doing role A is fantastic at it, but the market now requires role B. So we'll take elements of Mr. Smith's skills and abilities and we'll add them to Mrs. Jones's skills and abilities, and we'll get one new role in the end. We need a continuity of business, we need a continuity of skills in our organisation, and we need a continuity of processes. And that's what succession plan's all about, to make sure these three things line up. Also, very, very importantly, we want new ideas and innovations to grow in our organisation, and new people are a great source of these. And we want people to develop. We want job satisfaction. We want people to feel worthy. And development is a massive motivational tool that we really can't ignore in there. So when you develop your HR strategy, obviously this needs to come along with a business strategy. So if you sell 10 widgets now, and in a year's time you hope to sell 100 widgets, you would probably need an increase in your sales team. So you need to think about what that capacity is going to look like in now and in the future, and this helps in your succession plan as well. So if for example, you might have an administration team without a team leader, but if you know the business is going to grow, at some point you may need a team leader in there for the administration team. So you can start to look at people's skills and abilities, and start to look at what development you need to put in place. Obviously, this then fits into a bigger picture of an internal recruitment process and fairness, etc. But you need to start planning for these along with a business strategy. If the business strategy is downsizing or you're losing a business unit, again, if you've got some key skills in a role that you know is not going to be there in the future, but you don't want to lose this person because they have some very good transferable skills, how will that fit into other areas of business and what can you move into there? So we've really got to look at our HR capacity, what it's like now, what it looks like for the future, and build these things together on our resource. Really align this with our organisational goals so that we have the right people to do the right jobs to give the right output. Are there any opportunities for people to develop internally? And this needs to be linked into your appraisal systems and also to your manager skills in understanding the team. I always talk about hidden diamonds in people management. And do you actually know where everybody wants to go? And unless you're communicating with them regularly and holding your appraisals and understanding about their future desires and any hidden skills that they've got, how do you know where they want to develop to? So if you have very regular feedback sessions and a structured appraisal system, you should understand your people and see where they want to move to. So if there is a change in business direction, if there are new opportunities open up, you can already look within your current resource, look at the capacity you've got, and look at development plans to take people to where you need them to be. Very importantly, you need to think of what about if we lost the HR capacity that we've got. So these people that are doing a job that we haven't got the other internal skills, and how will we actually deal with that? And that's a key thing that I'm going to come on and talk to you about now in the skills assessment, because we need to understand what we've got and where our risks are. Now, when I do management training, as doing a skills assessment, I know that might be very small on your screens, but if I can just run through what it actually means. I use this as a great tool for managers to look at their maturity and skills within the team that they've got. Now, this is a very basic, but I like basic in this respect. So on there, I've got a list of people down the side, and along the top, I've got a list of skills. Now, obviously, this is just an example one, but to have a look on there, we can look very clearly. I have coded it as 0 being no skills, and I've actually put them in red, through to 5 highly skilled, which I put in green. The 1s and 2s, which are your danger areas, so they've got poor skills or below average skills, are in yellow. So automatically I can look on there, and if I'm looking down columns with lots of reds or a lot of yellows, then I'm in quite a lot of trouble. So if I looked on this example that I've got, the second and third from the right, telephone skills and relationships, building relationships, I've only got 2 people in there. Well, it's actually one person. It's Joe, who's very skilled in those 2 areas. He scores a 5. Nobody else can show those skills and complete those tasks. So if Joe suddenly went off sick, or if Joe left to go to a competitor, or if Joe retired, then we would really be in trouble in there. So at a very quick glance, I can look down there and say, I need to upskill some other people in telephone skills and building relationships. I'd think even about on holidays, how would I cover that? If Joe went on a training course, how would I cover that? So I'd be really examining that to look at the key areas. Other things that I would look at is the greens. So on negotiation, we've got 5 people who are very strong on negotiation. So I'm quite happy with that. And if the zeros, so we've got 4 people who score 0 in negotiation. If they came to me in their development plan and said, I'd really like to have some training on negotiation, and I had a training budget to work with, I'd perhaps be less inclined to encourage that route of training because as a business that isn't skills where we've got a big gap. It might be nice for their personal development, but ultimately we've got to think of the business need, and I may encourage them to develop in other areas such as telephone skills or building relationships where we're really stuck. I'd also then, so two things that these work for, looking at the skills and where our gaps are and where we're quite well suited, and also looking down people. So looking across, Albert scores 5 in 4 areas and a 3 in another. He's quite a key person in my team. If Albert left, I'd be, not in a great place. So I'd ensure that I was understood fully with Albert what his development plans were, if he was happy at work, where he wanted to move to and what would suit him. Again, align these with a business need. If he said, actually, I'd like to do flower arranging, so, don't actually need that at work, so that's all very nice, but, we can't accommodate that. So I'd be looking at what we need at work and how to develop in. Now, just touching on what I said about the skills of I've lost my train of thought there, on the skills that are appropriate for the business and looking for where people want to go. That's got to be our primary objective. So we need to look at what the business needs to function. Depends on the size of your organisation, your training budget, and how you invest in other things, whether you want to develop outside of that remit. Lots of organisations don't due to cost and time, and that's a perfectly valid reason to do so. I think that we need to look at what is essential and how that person can grow, but also look at how they could grow in that job. That person doesn't necessarily need to grow into the next level, and it could be things like projects. I always get the question asked if there's an internal vacancy and you have a couple of people apply for that internal vacancy, and obviously, if there's one vacancy, it means one successful candidate. How do you keep the other people motivated? What if you do feel that they're a great asset in that role and that's where their skills and competencies lie? How can you keep them motivated and keep them going? And the question is, look a bit broader for areas of responsibility, perhaps any project work that could come into it, because development doesn't have to be straight up a ladder. You can think broadly as well. To bring you business benefits. So, for example, I'll use, a sales manager role as an example because it's always an interesting one because sometimes your best salespeople do not make your best sales managers. But you have two of your, you have your best salesperson and your mediocre salesperson apply for your sales manager role. Actually, the mediocre salesperson has a much better people management and workplace management skills. So they are rewarded for promotion to that role. How do you then keep your best salesperson motivated to keep them? Well, it might actually be that route to management wasn't the correct skills match for them, and you can look at how you can reward them within their role of senior salesperson, taking on responsibility to train new starters, giving them key accounts, giving them a new business initiative to work on, etc., etc. So we don't necessarily just have to move people into other roles because they feel like they have to move up this ladder. I had this very same thing with an organisation that had a very technical person who thought that her only route to progress, and she was very, very career-driven, was up into an advisor level that actually involved quite a bit of sales skills. And she just didn't have the right skills for this role. And she was so driven and thought she only had one option to go up. She was very hard to keep motivated to explain to her, well, actually, I haven't got the skills to go into that role. She found very, very demoralising and demotivating to herself. So what we did with that organisation, we actually moved her into a technical manager position within that company that brought an awful lot of value to the organisation. So it wasn't creating a role for the person, which I never recommend. It was there's a need for this technical presence within the organisation that she will support other people, train other people, etc., etc. And she has then seen a different progression route, and she is absolutely over the moon with her development. But when she only saw one route to development, if we hadn't have looked more broad to that to fit her needs with the business needs, then we could have lost that key person to the organisation. So a lot to think about in all this. Moving on to workplace planning, and this is thinking about how you're actually going to translate this strategy into your organisation. So we've got to link the business planning with the strategy. So we know where we want to go to as an organisation, how we're going to plan that out, and obviously I'm very interested in how we're going to plan out the people. So the first thing would be looking at a training development budget. Have you got something in there in place? Now, bear in mind that to develop internal staff might be a whole lot cheaper than to recruit externally for these roles. So in your succession plan, when you go to your FD with your business proposal, to do that, you need some sort of comparison and to show that you wouldn't be spending as much money on external recruitment. And depends how you do source your external candidates, but it can be a very expensive exercise, not only in actual recruitment, but the training development they would need for the organisation. Remember that training development doesn't always need cost, and I think that's where we get mixed up sometimes. Yes, you've got your external courses, you've got trainers that you bring into the organisation, but there's also the key of using internal resource, self-educating, internet articles, etc., etc. There's a lot of online stuff these days, shadowing people that already do the job, setting internal assignments, etc., etc. So think a bit broader about direct costs for training and development. I would definitely suggest that if you don't already have it in your in your appraisal process, that there is an element to that about aspirations and goals, because you need to understand where people want to go and what they want to achieve, so you can help plan for the future. So if you do understand that some people are perfectly happy doing the role that they want, or they're happy doing the role that they want while, for example, their family are young and they want to have a flexible work and home life balance, then that's good to know. If you also need to know that somebody wants to go off and fly to the moon next year and you're not in that market, then you would need to know that too. So make sure that that's built in and that your managers are trained to have these open and honest conversations without repercussion at appraisals. Think about some targets and how you're going to motivate people to get to these. So if you do put a succession plan in place for somebody to develop their skills, make sure the objectives, we set smarter objectives. For those who've been on my webinars before, my smarter objectives being SMART. I can't even say SMART, never mind tell you what it stands for. But along the line of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, and then my ER is enjoyable and recorded on there too. Think about your motivation strategy. And what are people's key drivers in your organisation? Is motivation, is growth a big thing to them? Is salary a big thing to them? And we need to look at how that fits in with the budget that we've got. So we need to, as I said, think about training budget and recruitment budget. So it's a tough one when, to put this into a financial plan, to say, you need to look back through history of the organisation, what recruitment has cost you, and then do some work around what training may cost too, and set some budgets aside that you can work to justify this means and also prove the benefit. And then hopefully, when you start doing this, you can look back and really prove that this has been a very cost-effective way to man the organisation. Also, what I'd be aware of is overskilling. We want to keep people, and I'm sure when we put lots of skills in place, often our competitors would really like them too. And the individuals, we can't be constantly learning. We can certainly get learned out, and people don't want to carry on learning. Think about the skills this person needs for the role, because they're not going to be, particularly good use to us if we don't give them the skills to do the role. I once met a guy, and he was telling me about his brilliant new recruit that he had that came with fantastic references. She was absolutely amazing. She'd worked for all these companies. What she couldn't do wasn't worth writing about. And I think all the skills were in marketing. I said, oh, great, what's she going to be doing with you? Sales. Well, those are two very different roles. So she's got a brilliant skill set, but you're not going to utilise it. So, it's absolutely no benefit to you. And it's not motivating for the individual if they're not using those skills as well. I'd also perhaps very strongly recommend that you look at training indemnities as well when you put this in place. I don't want you to train up all your staff to be somebody else's succession plan. So keep that in mind too. And then I just finally want to talk about finding and keeping the best people, because we haven't always got our internal resource. And we will have to look external for succession plans. And we want to ensure that when we do have the right people, either internal or external, that we keep them there, that they can follow through a succession plan. Now, let's be realistic about the workplace. People don't stay in jobs for a whole of a lifetime in general, but we can do a lot to work for a very successful working relationship with people. So in the link to the recruitment, when we're looking for people, we really need to think about the skills that are needed in the business. So going back to that example, if somebody is a brilliant person, brilliant skills, fantastic at what they do, but we don't actually need that in an organisation, it's not going to bring us anything, and we'll probably end up spending a very large salary for little gain, and things like that usually end wrong because the person, if they don't have the skills to do the job they're employed for, they're not bringing you value, and you might end up having to part company, which wasn't good for anyone. Build skills into roles. I'm a massive believer that we actually don't build a role around a person. Now, I might have deviated from this. Perhaps I can think of once in my career where I did identify an amazing candidate, and I did suggest that we built this into a role for this person. However, it was still areas that we needed. We need to look at the processes within our business, think what that skills those processes require, and then build that into a role. And I do a lot of exercises with either companies or departments where we look at what comes in, what goes out, and what needs to happen in the middle. And when we look at what needs to happen in the middle, we can move into, right, what skills does somebody need to do that job? And then we can come up with the job description and the person's specification from that. So once we've identified what we actually want, we can put it in there. Now, part of that might be where that's developing to, or our desirable is here. The recruitment market isn't going to give us that, so we're going to take a step back and recruit somebody with less skills and have a training development plan to move into that. So that's absolutely key as well. And obviously, when we recruit, and make sure we're looking in the right places and we use the right and appropriate selection tools for finding that person. Okay, and finally, just a couple of words on retention. Now, training development are absolutely key retention tools. They can make a massive difference in motivation. And succession plans, is to have something wrote down and committed to, is really good for motivation and will help you keep people, especially if they can see where they can get to and what they can do. Remember, I'm talking about horizontally as well as vertically. So if we think about what does motivate people, when we have the basics right, then it's other things that give a great benefit, like clarity of instructions, supervisors, teamwork, etc., etc. And succession plans and training development are a key part of that. So if you have something defined and somebody knows what training you're going to put in place, what they're going to get out of it, how might help them develop their career and possibly pay prospects, they can be far more settled in the role than if somebody externally dangles the carrot to go and work somewhere else. And ultimately, we want to keep people in our organisation. It can also mean that they might choose life plans external to work in a certain way to accommodate their work succession plan too. So think about the motivation, think about what they get out of it. A key point, though, is if we say we're going to do it, let's make sure it's realistic and achievable, and let's follow through on it. There's nothing more unmotivational than if your manager tells you, yeah, we're going to train you up with this extra skill. So you sat in your appraisal and we say, yeah, we're going to get you a training course in the next 3 months to do that, and you know, we can see where you're going to. 3 months comes and goes, nothing happens. You speak to your manager. Sorry, it's just been a bit of delay. We'll get you on the next 3 months. So total 6 months goes by, nothing happens. Sorry, I've had a problem with the budget. Leave it with me. Another 9 months, etc., etc. This person's going to be highly demotivated. So make sure your training plans are realistic and achievable in terms of time, money, and what you hope for that person to achieve as well. If not, they will really work the opposite for us. And make sure they're in line with our business strategy, that we are getting everything out of there. Not everybody wants to develop, or not everybody might understand what development routes are available. But at the end of the day, we want a business that's equipped with the skills to deliver on our overall business strategy. The best way to do that is to enable people and give them the tools to do that, and personal growth factors in that very highly for personal development. Okay, so that kind of brings me on to the end of the webinar. I haven't done too badly on timing this week. I haven't babbled too much as I usually do. So I'm more than happy to take any questions and answers from anybody. Please do use the chat box if there's anything you want to contribute in there. And anything back that I might want to answer. Sorry, you're... Oh, right. Richard's just let me know that he is running a webinar tomorrow on how to find the best talent. So just picking up on some of the points I said there about finding the right people for your business. That might be something that you want to book onto, which you can find via the website. If you haven't already, please go on to there and do that.